Mr. Vance, we receive an anonymous report alleging that the child's living environment is unsafe and that there are suspicious activities happening here. Can you explain why someone would say that? The words landed in the living room like a heavy stone dropped into a calm lake, shattering every sense of peace Marcus had tried so hard to preserve. He stood frozen in the middle of the small apartment, hands unconsciously clenched, the color draining from his face. This space, where he used to read bedtime stories to his daughter, where pancakes were flipped every Sunday morning, had become a crime scene, a place of suspicion and intrusion. Across from him stood a man in a navy blue suit, striped tie perfectly knotted. Beside him, a woman in a gray blouse and trench coat clutched a notebook, her eyes cold as steel. They didn't look at Maya as a child. They saw her as a subject under investigation. And that alone made Marcus feel like something inside his chest was being crushed. Maya, 7 years old, her neatly braided hair and princess dress still stained with yesterday's marker ink, was quietly sobbing behind him. Her tiny arms wrapped tightly around his leg, as if the world were collapsing and her father was the last thing holding it together. "We have the right to inspect the entire residence," the woman stated flatly, not waiting for a response. Marcus tried to remain composed, but inside, everything was boiling. He had nothing to hide, yet the way they opened cupboards, flipped chairs, scrutinized family photos as if they were evidence of a crime, it stripped him bare. Each familiar object, touched without care, felt like a blow to his dignity. In the medical field, he had witnessed people dying from physical pain. But this was another kind of death, the death of trust. 3 weeks earlier, it had been a stormy night in Chicago. Not just rain, more like the sky itself was raging against the world. Marcus had just finished a night shift, still wearing his nurse scrubs, the scent of antiseptic clinging to him as he trudged across the wet pavement. All he wanted was to get home, hug his daughter to sleep, and do it all over again tomorrow. Then he saw her, a young woman trembling beneath the awning of a closed 24/7 store. The flickering neon lights reflected off her soaked skin, giving her an eerie, fragile glow. Her eyes weren't those of someone who had lived on the streets. They were the eyes of someone who had just escaped something far worse than cold or hunger. Marcus didn't ask questions. He removed his coat and gently placed it around her shoulders. "You'll catch a cold. My place is nearby. It's warm. It's safe." She looked at him, hesitant, then nodded. Her name was Sarah. Just Sarah. No last name. No past. The next 2 weeks became the strangest and, somehow, the most beautiful time. Sarah became part of their little family. In the mornings, she helped Marcus prepare breakfast. In the afternoons, she and Maya built Lego castles. At night, she told fairy tales in her husky, soft voice, sometimes quoting lines from plays she clearly loved. Maya adored her, and Marcus, who had locked away his heart since his wife died, found himself smiling more than he had in years. Some nights, after Maya had gone to bed, they sat together in the dim kitchen light, talking about dreams they'd abandoned. "Do you believe people can start over?" Sarah asked once. Marcus nodded. If they're brave enough to leave the past behind. He didn't know, or perhaps refused to know, that she was preparing to leave, back to the present. The apartment was in disarray. CPS had left behind a printed warning notice, its language clinical and heartless. "The situation will be reviewed." Maya had cried herself to sleep. Marcus stood in the shadows, one hand pressed to his forehead, the other gripping the paper so tightly it crumpled. The phone rang. He hesitated. A part of him didn't want to answer, but some primal instinct, made him pick up. "Marcus Vance," came the voice on the other end, cold enough to chill his blood. "I hear you're quite the good Samaritan, taking in trash off the street." Marcus said nothing. His throat was dry, bitter. "You think you can touch a hawthorn and just walk away?" Still silence. But the shiver that ran down Marcus's spine confirmed the fear he didn't dare name. "I'm going to crush you, you filthy nurse. I'll take your daughter, your career, that pathetic excuse for honor you cling to. And I want you to remember, I don't need to lay a finger on you to destroy you." Click. Marcus looked at Maya, fast asleep on the sofa, clutching her stuffed bear. He wasn't afraid anymore. Something deeper stirred within him, not blind rage, but a quiet steel forming in his soul. A storm had arrived, but this time, he wouldn't let it wash everything away. It wasn't thunder or police sirens that woke Marcus the next morning. It was the sound of Maya's sobs. He walked in her room and found her curled under the blanket, eyes red and puffy. In her hands was a piece of colored paper, a drawing crossed out violently with black ink. "I tore it up," Maya mumbled. "The kid said I'm not allowed to bring the pictures you draw for me to class anymore. They said you're a bad guy. They said you're going to jail." Marcus froze, not because of the words themselves, but because of how his daughter repeated them, like a parrot learning to doubt the one person she trusted most. He sat down and wrapped his arms around Maya, but something inside him cracked. His enemy didn't just want to destroy his life. He was poisoning the last innocence Marcus had left in his world. Alistair didn't aim for the wallet. He went straight for the soul. At the hospital, no one looked at Marcus the same way. Nods once offered in passing turned into averted gazes. The casual good mornings vanished. The department head called him into a closed-door meeting. The man's tone was professional, but Marcus could hear the layers of fear woven beneath each word. "We've received some concerns regarding your possible misuse of pain medication. Until a conclusion is reached, you'll be placed on temporary suspension." Marcus was speechless. He, who once stayed awake 48 hours straight to save a newborn in respiratory arrest. He, who had a spotless record down to the last decimal point, now had his license suspended over an anonymous report. There was no real investigation, just an empty chair and a puppet master pulling strings from behind the curtain. Within 48 hours, Marcus's bank accounts were frozen due to suspicious activity. His landlord issued a notice to vacate within 10 days, citing disturbance to the community. Even his phone began receiving strange calls in the middle of the night. Warped laughter, whispers saying, "You deserve this." Each strike hit with surgical precision, as if backed by a team of lawyers, psychologists, and media consultants. And they were. Marcus stopped sleeping. He sat alone in the dim living room, the blue glow of his laptop casting shadows on his tense face. Behind him, Maya had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her worn-out teddy bear. But amidst the chaos, he returned to an old habit: documentation. Years ago, a racist doctor had blamed him for a patient's death, simply because Marcus was the only black nurse on shift. But it was his meticulous notes, recorded down to the minute, that cleared his name. And that was how he'd met Evelyn Reed, the lawyer who helped him expose the hospital's silent system of discrimination. Marcus reopened his digital journaling app. Everything about Sarah had been recorded. A video of her playing piano for Maya. An audio recording of her saying thank you the night before she left. Text checking in on Maya when she had a slight cold. There was nothing suspicious, only warmth, honesty, and a man trying to build a good life in the midst of loss. He began recording everything. Audio clips of threatening calls, screenshots of emails from his bank, notes on suspicious activity in the neighborhood, records of his work schedule, meetings, and co-workers' remarks. The Hawthorne Project, that's what he named it. Not to win, to survive. At first, it was defense. But deep down, Marcus knew he didn't want to just survive anymore. Friday night, just as Marcus was filling the bathtub for Maya, the doorbell rang. He answered it with dark circles under his eyes and no expectations of kindness. Standing there was Evelyn Reed, still in her black suit, hair tied up, gaze as piercing as the day they met in court all those years ago. But this time, she wasn't holding a legal brief, just a paper bag with apple pie inside. "You still like apple pie, right?" she asked, her voice a touch softer. Marcus nodded and quietly stepped aside to let her in. At the dining table, Evelyn opened her laptop. "Hawthorne isn't just rich. He has infrastructure." She slid a file across the table. "These are 4 people I once investigated for a former client, all of them destroyed by Alistair Hawthorne. A teacher who reported discrimination at a private school he funded. An artist who refused an exclusive contract. A journalist who exposed his illegal construction projects. And one more who vanished. All 4 went silent after accepting money." Marcus looked at the list. The rage inside him wasn't explosive anymore. It was sharper, calmer, like a blade honed with tears. Evelyn studied him. You can walk away. Leave Chicago. Move on. I can help. Marcus shook his head. He looked at his laptop, files of evidence being sorted. Then at Maya, giggling in a bathtub. Finally, he looked at Evelyn. His eyes no longer held the look of a victim. He made a mistake, Marcus said, voice low and steady. He thought I was alone. You know, Evelyn said as she tidied the makeshift workstation in Marcus's living room. Many people have stood up to Alastair Hawthorne before, but they didn't fail because they lacked evidence. They failed because they lacked strategy. What do you mean? Marcus asked, fingers still flying across the keyboard, eyes fixed on lines of data. I mean, if you want to topple a king, you don't just need a blade. You need a stage. Marcus paused. The words cut straight into his mind like a sharpened knife. And for the first time in his life, he understood truth wasn't enough. You needed timing, context, and the gaze of the crowd. The old apartment suddenly transformed into a war room. Evelyn sketched behavioral maps of Alastair based on testimonies from former victims. Marcus sifted through data like a physician reading a heart monitor, detecting patterns, timestamps, call spikes. The threats all come after 9 p.m., he said, eyes locked to the screen. But Fridays are different. He called earlier. His voice sounds like he's celebrating. Arrogance is a weakness, Evelyn nodded. We'll make him trip over his own ego. That night, they sat side by side at the dinner table, faces lit by the soft glow of the laptop screen. Amid all the wreckage, Marcus felt something unexpected. For the first time in a long while, he was living with purpose. Monday morning, an email arrived from an encrypted address, angel@protonmail.com. No subject, no greeting, just a single, haunting paragraph. My father is going to frame you for stealing fentanyl from the hospital. They're coming to search your home on Wednesday at 10 a.m. I can't let him ruin another good person. Marcus went still. Evelyn leaned closer to the screen, eyes narrowing. Angel, she asked. Marcus nodded slowly. Serafina. Attached was a .zip file, password protected. A single line of instruction. The password is the name of my first dog, the one I told Maya about. Marcus remembered. One afternoon, Maya had giggled and said, Sarah said her dog's name was Muffin. I love that name. He typed in Muffin. The file opened. And then the world tilted. Inside was a trove of evidence any federal prosecutor would salivate over. Scanned contracts for consulting with shell companies. Photos from secret meetings. A crystal-clear voice recording of Alastair saying, we launder money through West Coast housing projects. Timelines of illegal donations to local officials. And most damning of all, a list of 12 individuals paid to stay silent, including Marcus's own department chief. We could blow up Hawthorne's entire empire with this, Evelyn whispered. Marcus shook his head. If we hand it to the FBI right away, he'll know. He's got enough lawyers to stall until he dies on a yacht. Evelyn tilted her head. So what do you want? I want him arrested in the act. On camera. Marcus devised a bold plan. He reached out to an old friend, Lieutenant Jonathan Hale, head of hospital security. Years ago, Marcus had saved Jonathan's son from anaphylactic shock while the doctors were still arguing over treatment protocols. It was one of those rare moments when a father never forgets the nurse who changed everything. Marcus told him half the truth, just enough for Jonathan to meet his gaze and say with fierce clarity, I'll help. But you better be damn sure that when this blows up, no one can deny it. Tuesday, hidden cameras were installed throughout Marcus's home. One in the medicine cabinet, one in the outlet, one on the nightstand lamp. Real fentanyl vials were swapped for inert lookalikes with fluorescent markers that would glow under UV light. A micro GPS device was embedded in one of the boxes, ready to track the planted evidence once it moved. Evelyn handled logistics, media coordination, pre-drafted files for investigators, quiet meetings with investors who had once been Alastair's silent victims. Wednesday, 10 a.m., Marcus said as they did the final check. We let him walk into his own trap. The night before the reckoning. Marcus sat beside Maya's bed. She was already asleep, arms curled around her stuffed bear. He held her tiny hand and whispered, "Tomorrow, everything might change. But no matter what happens, you are the reason I keep standing." He looked out the window. The Chicago skyline was still, like it was holding its breath. Tomorrow, it would all begin. No more running. No more defense. This was the final gambit. And this time, Marcus made the first move. Wednesday, 9:58 a.m. The wind sliced through the streets of Chicago, sharp and cold as a blade. Marcus sat inside a silver surveillance van parked 2 blocks away from his apartment. Beside him were Evelyn, Lieutenant Jonathan Hale, and 2 security technicians from the hospital. On the monitor in front of them, 3 live feeds from hidden cameras inside Marcus's apartment played in silence. "Right on time," Evelyn said, glancing at her watch. "They're here." 2 men in utility uniforms, reflective vests, hard hats, entered the building, unaware that every move they made was being captured from 3 angles, with audio clear enough to catch the rhythm of their breath. Inside the apartment at 10:01, one man crouched near the outlet by the desk, while the other slipped a small plastic bag containing drug vials into the bathroom cabinet. Moments later, one of them made a call. "It's done. We'll be out in 5. Send the cops in at 10:30. In the surveillance van, Jonathan clenched his fist. "Gotcha." The UV signal picked up the fluorescent marker inside the fake vials. The trap had been sprung. Evelyn switched her headset to a secure channel. Phase 2. Go. Downtown Chicago, the 38th floor of Hawthorne Global. Alastair Hawthorne stood confidently on stage, dressed in a sleek silver-gray suit. Behind him, a massive LED screen showcased futuristic city plans, growth charts, and promises of next-generation smart infrastructure. Investors, journalists, and city officials hung onto every word. "We don't just build buildings," he said, voice deep and sure. "We build the future." The room buzzed with anticipation until it didn't. "Excuse me, Mr. Hawthorne," came a woman's voice near the entrance. "I believe everyone here would prefer a different presentation." All heads turned. Evelyn Reed stepped in, dressed in black, holding a folder in one hand and a remote in the other. 2 plainclothes FBI agents flanked her. "Who are you?" Alastair asked, brows furrowing but tone calm, not realizing or refusing to believe that the flood had arrived. "I'm Evelyn Reed, legal counsel for a group of plaintiffs preparing to file suit against you. But first, I think everyone here deserves to see a few things." She pressed the remote. The screen changed. No more maps. No more promises. Just truth. First, a clear video of 2 men planting drugs in Marcus's home, caught in full detail. Their faces, their movements, the damning line, "Send the cops in at 10:30. Second, an audio clip, Alastair's own voice. "Just leave it there. When the cops find it, he'll be the junkie nurse." Simple as that. Third, a slideshow of emails and financial records, shell company transfers, fake invoices, hush money contracts. All the evidence sent by Serafina. The room froze. Cameras whirred. A journalist snapped photos nonstop. An investor quietly reached for his phone to call a lawyer. Alastair's face turned pale. He stepped toward the microphone, voice raised, trying to reclaim the moment. "This is fake. A setup," but he was cut off by an agent's voice. "Alastair Hawthorne, you are under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, federal money laundering, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice." The handcuffs gleamed beneath the crystal lights. And just like that, an empire crumbled for all the world to see. 11:30 a.m., a park near Marcus's home. Maya laughed as she swung back and forth, her curls bouncing in the wind. Marcus stood behind her, pushing gently, steadily. His phone buzzed. A message from Evelyn. "It's done." He didn't reply. Instead, he looked up at the sky, bright and still, as if no storm had ever passed. That afternoon, headlines exploded across American media. Real estate mogul arrested mid-presentation. Money laundering empire exposed live on screen. Whistleblower is a nurse. Marcus Vance, widower, single father. Social media is flooded with admiration, outrage, and inspiration. People called him the everyday man who brought down a king. But Marcus didn't read the news. He was at home, making lunch with Maya, helping her sprinkle cheese onto the pasta bake. And for the first time in a long time, they laughed like they had never walked through hell. 3 days later, a handwritten letter appeared in Marcus's mailbox. No envelope, no stamp, just a thick ivory sheet with delicate, familiar handwriting. Marcus, I want to apologize for my father. He made his choices, and he chose power over humanity. But I want to thank you, because you didn't become him, even though you had every reason to. You didn't save me by standing in front of my father. You saved me by living a life I thought didn't exist, honest, kind, and steady like stone in a storm. I'm leaving, not to run, but to begin. I'm using part of my inheritance to start a foundation for those destroyed by the abuse of power, especially people like you. People dismissed just because they don't have the last name Hawthorne. You didn't just save yourself, Marcus. You saved me. So, Marcus folded the letter and tucked it into his jacket pocket. He didn't need to keep it to remember. Every word was stitched into his memory like emergency room sutures. Not flashy, but life-saving. 1 week later, at Chicago Central Hospital, the new department chief, an Asian American woman, MD from Johns Hopkins, personally met Marcus in HR. We'd like to issue a public apology on behalf of the hospital. What happened to you was the result of systemic weakness, and we're committed to changing that. She slid a contract across the table. Head of emergency nursing, double salary, full authority to rebuild procedural structure. Marcus looked at the offer. Then he looked out the window. In the hallway, a patient was crying in pain after chemotherapy. A young nurse stood nearby, unsure how to help. Thank you, Marcus said, but I'm a nurse, and my place is with the patients. The chief nodded. I figured you'd say that. That evening, the apartment was still the same, old, modest, but filled with warm light. Marcus was reading to Maya, who leaned against his shoulder, clutching her stuffed bear muffin. And then the little bird, though injured, flew to its friend to sing one last song. Because, you see, a sincere song can soften even the hardest heart. Maya looked up suddenly. Daddy, why did that man hate you? Why did he want to take me away from you? Marcus didn't speak of power, or racism, or status. He looked into her eyes, innocent, trusting, full of hope, and answered slowly, his voice low and firm. Because, sweetheart, some people don't see others with their hearts. They use magnifying glasses. They only see what they want to believe, not who people truly are. Maya nodded. So, what's our strength then, Daddy? Marcus smiled and brushed her soft curls. Our strength is never letting anyone define who you are. It's doing the right thing, even when no one's watching. It's protecting what's right, even when you stand alone. He kissed her forehead, and it's knowing how to forgive without ever forgetting. Late that night, Marcus stood by the window. The city lights flickered in the distance. Chicago, still fast, fierce, and sometimes cruel. But tonight, it no longer made him feel small. He didn't have a mansion. He didn't have a Hawthorne name. He didn't have an empire. He had Maya, an old laptop, an integrity that had never been sold. And that, perhaps, is the greatest inheritance a man can leave his child. Because in a world of glass towers and golden promises, the truest power is still found in the quiet courage of a heart that refuses to bow. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from the courts. It comes from a single father, an unyielding heart, and the belief that kindness is never wasted. Marcus Vance had no fortune, no influence, but he possessed something Alistair Hawthorne's empire could never buy: integrity. He didn't fight with hate. He fought with light. And because of that, he saved not just his daughter, but countless others who never had the chance to speak. And what about you? Have you ever been judged because of where you come from, the color of your skin, or because you didn't carry a powerful last name? Share your story in the comments below. If Marcus's journey moved you, like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to Toch Story so you won't miss the stories that restore your faith in kindness, justice, and the strength of an ordinary heart. Toch Story, where stories aren't just told, they're felt.